Today on the AI Daily Brief, we're looking at what the AI Engineer World's Fair tells us about the state of AI development. Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief Headlines Edition, all the AI Daily news you need in around 5 minutes. In this category of novelty/human interest/AI moving into pop culture, NBC has announced that they will offer a customized daily highlight reel during the upcoming Paris Olympics with AI-narrated generation that sounds like Al Michaels. Al Michaels has been covering the Olympics for decades now, and rather than him being, quote, holed up in a broadcast booth each night, briefly summarizing dozens of Olympic events, instead, NBC has trained an AI model on Al Michaels' voice, with, of course, Al Michaels' approval. Said Michaels, when I was approached about this, I was skeptical but obviously curious. Then I saw a demonstration detailing what they had in mind. As the New York Times points out, AI-generated Al Michaels is almost sure to draw interest given its novelty. But there has been no shortage of tales of embarrassing errors, faceplants, and slightly alarming hallucinations as AI has burst into widespread use over the past 18 months. So what's interesting about this is that where voice technology doesn't make sense is if it's just replacing a thing that it would be easy for humans to do. Where AI voice cloning gets more interesting is when it's actually applied to a type of volume or customization that would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, for an individual to do on their own. This looks to be the second type of approach. Writes The Times, subscribers who want the Daily Peacock highlight reel will be able to choose the Olympic events that interest them most and the types of highlights they want to see, such as viral clips, gold medalists, and elimination events. From there, The Times writes, Peacock's AI machines will get to work each evening cranking out the most notable moments and putting them together in a tidy, customized package. Mr. Michaels' recreated voice will be piped over the reels. Now, The Times also says that humans will make quality control checks on the AI highlight reels, but presumably that's in the aggregate, not humans checking each reel, as it wouldn't really be particularly scalable if that was the approach. And here's where we get to the volume and customization that I said would be impossible without AI. NBC officials anticipate 7 million different variations of customized highlights. Obviously, that is a volume of work that Al Michaels, even as energetic as the 79-year-old is, simply could not do. So we'll see. I think they're right that this is likely to cause a lot of controversy and focus, but the concept could ultimately be pretty interesting. Next up, seemingly never not fundraising, Perplexity AI has secured more money at a new $3 billion valuation, according to Bloomberg. SoftBank is chipping in $10 to $20 million as part of a larger $250 million funding round at a $3 billion valuation. It sounds like the deal has not yet been finalized, given that no one was willing to comment on it, but there have been a ton of reports around this, and so I think it's fairly safe to say that some version of it is likely to happen. This would be around 6x growth in the company's valuation over the last 6 months. Over in the annals of how companies are starting to actually deploy generative AI, Amazon is apparently using Gen AI in its finance organization. Writes the Wall Street Journal, Amazon's finance teams are turning to generative AI in areas such as fraud detection, contract review, financial forecasting, personal productivity, interpretation of rules and regulations, and tax-related work. The company says that these are at a combination of experimental and implementation stages. Said Dave George, VP of Finance Technology at Amazon, while experimentation and getting to know the technology are things that we really want to speed up, actually deploying this into production and making sure that we are in a well-controlled situation is very, very important for us. The reason that this type of story matters is that it shows that we are entering a different phase with AI, especially when it comes to its integration into the enterprise. More and more, you're going to see articles like this that aren't just talking about the little proof of concepts that people are doing, but instead the full-scale organization-wide implementations where companies are actually trying to wrestle to the ground the productivity gains that could come from AI. Speaking of another story in the journal, Goldman Sachs has started deploying its first generative AI tool across the firm. This first tool is actually for code generation, and it will roll out to thousands of developers across Goldman Sachs by the end of the month. Writes WSJ, Chief Information Officer Marco Argenti said the company's approach to generative AI involves centralizing all proprietary uses of the technology on an internal platform and restricting them elsewhere. Said Argenti, it might have slowed us down initially, but then we definitely gained a lot of velocity afterwards. I will be interested to see how this plays out. I have a lot of skepticism around the approach of trying to tightly control things in quite the way that GS is doing. I think financial institutions obviously have a totally different level of risk assessment and compliance and restrictions around that might lead it to make sense to have this kind of approach when it comes to the sort of vertical AI that everyone in the organization is going to use. However, doing that to the exclusion of allowing employees to also experiment with other simpler, safer, productivity-winning AIs along the way, I think will end up being seen as a mistake. Finally, a conversation that I think is probably worth a little bit more time even than just the highlights. Bill Gates has said that we shouldn't be overly concerned about AI's impact on energy use. Although Gates said that data centers would drive a rise in global electricity use of between 2 and 6%, Gates also said the question is, will AI accelerate a more than 6% reduction? And basically his argument comes down to the same thing that Sam Altman has been talking about, that in fact the demand for energy for AI is likely to produce energy breakthroughs as a second-order consequence. Super interesting stuff. Like I said, this is deserving of a much larger conversation, but for now, that is going to do it for the headlines. Up next, the main episode.